My war is set in motion. This is the extinction of the human race.
So you are responsible for all this?
Why do you think I came back?
After everything you've lost, do you still have any fight left in you?
The only power I have was planted between my ears by a single mother. If that ain't enough, I don't know what hope we have.
You're the most wanted and hated man on the planet. Consider this a preview, Nick. I'm gonna make sure you get the whole show.
You're out of moves, Fury. This is a ticking time bomb.
You got to figure out which side you're on.
Marvel Studios' Secret Invasion.
You going to shoot me? Maybe. Oh, probably.
Welcome back to the Cinema Club podcast. My name is Christopher Amick, and I will be your host for today's episode of the Cinema Club. Cinema Club is like a book club, but for movies. Every episode, Nick Leach or myself invite one member of the Cinema Club to be a co-host for the episode who will choose a movie or television show and join Nick or myself on the podcast to talk about the film or episode. Today, my co-host is Jesse, and we are also joined by John, and we are covering the season finale along with the season as a whole of Secret Invasion. I did also want to mention that we do dive into the movie Barbie and Oppenheimer a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, but we don't go into any spoilers at all. But then I did want to give a quick spoiler warning for the rest of the podcast episode where we do dive into Secret Invasion as a whole, as a TV show, and also the season finale episode. All that being said, let's get into it. Is it cool if we just talk about Barbenheimer for a couple minutes and then we jump into the episode? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I know, Jesse, you saw both Oppenheimer and Barbie last weekend.
Yeah.
John, did you get a chance or were you still working with your car?
Yeah. Well, I kind of got my car figured out. I got a temporary fix figured. So I was able to see both. I did see Oppenheimer, though.
That's what I saw this weekend as well. So, Jesse, since you saw both films, I mean, especially talk about Barbie, but which one did you have a better experience with?
Both of them were so good. And both of them have enough in them that I would 100% pay money to go see again. Both of them were solid films. Oppenheimer, I'm sad because we just went to the local movie theater for it. So, I mean, in an effort to save money and gas and time, we just saw it on a very, very small screen. We walked in, and at first I was a little concerned we walked into the wrong theater because everybody was over the age of 50. And I was like, okay.
Interesting.
But I guess it's because of the time of day we went, because we went at 1:15. So people were probably still at work. So these were
Like
probably
a weekday.
Yeah. These were probably all the retirees. But yeah, it was amazing. When we recorded last week's podcast, I was already dressed up for it. But we like to go to movies, not in cosplay exactly, but kind of, I guess. So we dressed up in 1940s stuff for that. So that was a lot of fun. The movie itself was obviously amazing. I mean, you two can talk about that one. Barbie, we actually did go into the cities to watch it. There's this gigantic, it's not an IMAX screen, but it's pretty darn big in St. Michael's. That was amazing. And that theater was playing up the Barbie stuff. So they had photo ops things, and it was just absolutely outrageous. There were a bunch of people all dressed up for it and stuff. Max and I were probably the most decked out in our pink. So I was a little sad because I'd been seeing videos of people really getting into it. And I was like, yeah, we'll be in good company. And people still did, but it was more like, oh, I'm going to wear a bright pink t-shirt, not a pink ball gown.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Barbie was fantastic. I mentioned this a little bit last week. I am a fan of the animated Barbie movies. Yeah, they're direct to video, watch it at home things, but they always have really good messages. And they were kind of leading in CGI 3D animation. So that's really cool. And then their very first movie was mocap animation, and they got the whole New York Ballet to wear mocap because it was a Nutcracker. So they did the whole, yeah, it was really cool. Anyways, so I was hoping there would be some classic Barbie flavors. There weren't, but that's okay. It was really good. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I liked a lot of the things they had to say in that movie, and all of the actors did fantastically. Every single person, even if they were a minor character, utterly rocked their part, even in the seconds of screen time they had. The whole thing was just outrageously put together and just amazing. The set design was amazing. The costume design was amazing. The characters themselves were amazing. It's a wacky, crazy, good time. They're completely opposite movies, but they're amazing and fantastic, and I love them.
And John kind of brought up last week kind of the question of, oh, who is the Barbie movie for? Do you have that answer after seeing the film?
100%. It is not for Gen Z. It's especially not for the little kids, but it's not even for like the teenagers. It's literally for millennials and Gen Xers who grew up with Barbie dolls, because the character that has the most effect on where the movie goes is a mom. She's a young, I'd say like maybe 40s-ish mom. So firmly, maybe tail end of Gen X, beginning of millennial age group. And she is the catalyst in the movie. So I would say that is the target audience, because there also is a Gen Z character, her daughter, but she doesn't quite have as much play into what happens in the movie. So yeah, I would definitely say it's for all of us who grew up with these dolls and stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like both Oppenheimer and Barbie had a lot of characters that maybe didn't have a ton of screen time, but definitely contributed to an awesome film. How was your experience with Oppenheimer, John?
Yeah, so I did not realize what a big deal these two movies were. I mean, you hear the hype and it's like, okay. So I went to the theater and got there like a few minutes before it was supposed to start. And then it took me like 15 minutes to find parking. And I've been to that theater a few times before, and the parking lot's mostly empty every time I've gone. It was crazy, like just how much of an event it was. And it wasn't opening night. It went Sunday, like to do the matinee on Sunday. And like, there was no empty seats. It was completely packed inside. It was almost like in-game type hype. And it was interesting. I was not expecting that at all. But I really liked the movie a lot. It felt like Christopher Nolan is like, I haven't won an Oscar for Best Picture, and I want to do it before I die. And I'm going to do it with this movie.
That's a great way to kind of put it, John, because I had a similar viewpoint, I guess, on the film. And yeah, my experience was the same with pulling up to the movie theater. It's packed. The IMAX screening I went to was full, so I'm very glad I got my tickets a few weeks ago, because I haven't seen it like that since I went to the second Spider-Man movie opening night. Like, that was full in IMAX, but other than that, I haven't seen it packed like that.
Max and I are avid theater goers. Like, we go to the movie theater a lot, even if there's a movie we're like, well, we don't need to see it in theaters, we can wait till streaming. If we have the time and we're like, sure, why not? We will go on a cheap day, because you know how theaters have like
Tuesdays or something,
or whatever. But Hutchinson also has like cheap seats theater, but they're like $5 all the time. So
oh wow, that's nice.
Go whenever.
Well, like tickets are like $20 over here.
Exactly. Ever since the pandemic, we've been going to movies with like either no one else or maybe 5 other people. Like maybe, okay? Even the bigger releases post-pandemic, like Spider-Man, maybe I would say 10 people. The theaters I've been going to have been empty. When we went to Barbie, the thing was full. It was full. It was sold out, and it was the last showing of the night. The last showing of the night, and it was sold out. And it wasn't even opening day. It was Sunday night. It had been out for 2 days already. Wild.
Yeah, it sounds like we all saw movies on Sunday because I went at 10:30 in the morning, and that movie theater was popping. It has 15 screens or something in the theater. Like they had multiple showings of Oppenheimer and Barbie going.
Yeah, it was good. I thought Cillian Murphy, is it Killian or Cillian? I never know how to say his name, but that guy, like, he was awesome. And so was Florence Pugh. And I saw when Robert Downey Jr. came on screen, I was like, hey, like, this is not Old Man Iron Man. I mean, I saw him in Sherlock, but I wasn't a big fan of his stuff pre-Avengers. Like, I don't think I've seen anything of that he was in before that. So
It's been a while, yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting to see him play a more serious role.
Yeah, and he rocked it. He's definitely, I think, up for a supporting cast member award there for sure. But yeah, Cillian Murphy. I mean, I've been excited for this movie ever since it was announced that he and Florence Pugh were in this movie because those are two of my top 5 favorite actors at the moment. And they have such a great relationship even off of the screen. Like watching interviews with them, they were just really excited to get to work with one another. And I think that really shows on screen in the film as well.
Yeah, he does such a great job of playing like the tortured like anti-hero. Like I don't know if you've seen Peaky Blinders ever.
Oh yeah, I love that show.
Yeah, he's definitely a different character, but like has that similar vibe of just like that tortured, like he's kind of doing, like you understand why he's doing what he's doing, even if you don't always agree with it.
Yeah, he has those set of eyes that I think he uses so well in his acting, where they're just portals to his tortured soul, I guess is how I would put it, when he's portraying these characters in film. Yeah, Peaky Blinders is awesome. If anyone listening hasn't, check that show out. The whole thing is out. I love the ending of the show. Go check it out. But yeah, I'm really glad that everybody had a good time at the theater this weekend. I know I definitely did. The IMAX, I will say the sound system was ranked in there, like almost a little bit too much. So I can't really comment on Christopher Nolan's sound mixing too much because I could hear everything pretty well because it was absolutely cranked in there. I know in the past, like in Tenet and some of his other films, there's been some criticism of sound mixing. I thought this was pretty good, at least in my experience. Do you guys have any thoughts by chance on that or in your experiences?
I probably can't too much just because of the theater I saw it in doesn't have great sound equipment to begin with. I will say it was fantastic even so. Like, you know what I'm talking about. The 2 parts that something happens definitely were great in that theater. And I did jump out of my seat. So that's good.
Well, yeah, like the sound mixing should definitely be up for awards as well in this film, because even the lack of sound plays a big role in this film.
The lack of sound was...
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I can't speak for Barbie, but Oppenheimer definitely is a film that should be seen on the biggest screen possible. If you have a good sound system to boot, awesome. It is 3 hours, so I was honestly kind of exhausted walking out of that film because it's a heavy film. I mean, I stood outside the theater for like 15 minutes talking about it with the people I went to see it on Sunday. And I think it is definitely a film where, like you were kind of saying, it's Christopher Nolan being like, hey, let's go get it together. And I think this film is going to be up for all the awards later this year.
I hope it is. And I hope like both movies were good, don't get me wrong. But I hope that Oppenheimer does get the awards it deserves, because not that the Barbie movie wasn't as good and didn't have great stuff to it also, but I do think Oppenheimer, if they're going head to head as far as awards go, I do think it should get the rewards for the actors, for the direction, for the cinematography, for all of it.
Yeah, I hope Oppenheimer gets it, just because it'd be kind of nice if the Oscars started like continue down this trend that they started last year with Everything Everywhere All at Once, where they give awards to movies where a lot of people have actually seen the movie, and it's not just a movie where the voters saw and none of us normal plebs out here saw.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I got to look at the films that are up for nomination and then go watch half of them usually because they haven't been on my radar. Sometimes that's good too, but like you're saying, John, it is nice when you can kind of see, hey, most of the nominations I'm familiar with or I've seen in the theater at this point, because I feel like it actually makes it more exciting as a viewer of that production usually. So I totally agree with you there. And yeah, I think Oppenheimer definitely has a shot at least for me personally, being a contender for best film of the year. I know it's going to be a top 5 regardless, but yeah, what a film. Seriously.
Yeah, and it's also really interesting. Like, it also kind of bucked the trend. These two movies together coming out being so popular. I mean, Barbie's a really big IP as a toy, but the old movies, animated ones, weren't like huge. They were a very niche. Like, certain kids loved them. So it's kind of interesting that with all the like franchise models that we've been seeing out of Hollywood for so long, like almost every movie is like a rehash. Like, most Disney movies are either superhero movies, Star Wars, or repeating their old animated classics into live action. And for it to be these two movies are the ones that were super popular and that everyone just went and saw one or the other or both even, that's kind of refreshing that it's these two original stories.
100%. I kind of talking about the box office. I was looking into this last night a little bit, and it was projected that by the end of Wednesday evening, Barbie will have made more money in 6 days than The Flash and Shazam 2 did in their entire theatrical runs combined.
Dang. Poor Shazam.
Yeah, which, I mean, I haven't seen either one of those films, so I guess that's for me. They were. Okay. I've heard Shazam was pretty good.
Yeah, they were good. I wouldn't say they're Oppenheimer or Barbie level. Shazam, I really like Shazam 1 and 2 as far as the DC movies go. Probably the best out of all of the DC movies, because I feel like a lot of DC movies struggle with knowing where they're going and what they are. And Shazam knows what it is and really leans into it and plays into it. And it's its own thing because it's like these kids and it's just outrageous and funny and endearing. So Shazam 2, great. Flash, I wanted to like more than I did, but I still liked it. I just wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is the best DC film so far.
Which it was kind of hyped up to potentially be. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And I should correct myself. I haven't seen The Flash, but I did watch Shazam 2 when it came out on streaming. And it's interesting because I had a very different experience with it than you, Jesse. I was like, this is terrible. And I enjoyed the first Shazam movie. But I mean, I kind of predict it from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think it was just like, okay, well, I've seen this for like the last 10 years, honestly.
Shazam 1 is definitely better than Shazam 2.
So we can definitely agree on that then. Awesome. Have you seen either one of those, John?
No, I saw the first Shazam, but no, I haven't seen the second one or Flash. I'm not a huge fan of the DCU. I really like Aquaman. Like Birds of Prey fell really flat, and I haven't seen most of them because they haven't looked as interesting. I guess I've definitely picked Team Marvel in that competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I definitely have enjoyed kind of the one-off separate DC films like Joker or the Batman movie. Like those have been really great, at least in my personal experience. But yeah, as far as like DCU, like the connected DC movies, majority of those aren't panning out for me as well as I'd like.
The Batman is so good. Like everyone I knew did not want to see it because they were like, why do we need a million trillion? This one isn't even connected. And I came out of that movie and I was like, everybody, you need to see it. Oh, it's so good. I like history and I like history of things. So I had looked into DC at one point and I was like, what does DC stand for? Oh, Detective Comics. I appreciated so much that the Batman felt like it went back to that. It felt very noir. It felt very detective-y. It felt very grounded instead of this high sweeping superhero film. He felt like he was going back to like a detective vigilante kind of. Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, I like that part of the Batman. I forgot that I actually saw that. I did see the Joker, but I like that part of it, the detective origin stuff. But I thought the lighting was too dark. There's parts where like it was just hard to see. And I thought it was like an hour too long. I think it needed to end after the detective story ended because I thought the last act, I guess, was just, that felt dry. I just wasn't into it at all. I found myself checking my phone to see what time it was. It was like, is this over yet?
I am a person that will watch a 5-hour movie. Oppenheimer, I was fine with the runtime. I did not come out of that exhausted. I like long things. I love them.
Yeah, I like long things too. I just don't want it to feel long. And for some of these really long movies don't feel long because you're just so invested in it, or it feels long in a good way where you just feel like, oh, there's so much happening. And with that, I felt like, oh, there's there's stuff still happening, and they had a good ending, and they blew past it. But yeah, we'll agree to disagree. That's fine.
Let's go ahead and jump into the finale and our thoughts on Secret Invasion then. The episode does begin with Fury calling his wife, Priscilla / Vara, essentially a goodbye call, and it's clear that Fury doesn't know if he'll come back. After the call, a car approaches the gates of New Skrullos. The guards open fire, but Fury wasn't even in the car. After quickly shooting them, Fury walks into the Skrull compound. After the credits, we catch up with Rhodey / Reva / Scrody, who is still pushing for the nuclear strike. The Admiral is hesitant to make such a move without verifying if the Russians really are working with the Skrulls. But Rhodey presses harder, showing the president live footage of Russian troops moving to their borders with Ukraine and Finland. Reva already has a speech written for the president, making one last push to launch the strike. At New Skrullos, Fury is surprised to find the facility abandoned. The radiation from the nuclear plants also makes it difficult for him to breathe. He constantly reaches into his pockets to take pills that keep him somewhat steady. He walks into the room with the machine where Gravik is waiting for him. They both place themselves within the confines of the machine as Gravik begins his villain monologue. He recalls how he viewed Fury as a hero and killed the man whose skin he has now taken on to fulfill his orders. Gravik goes on about how Fury promised a new home to the Skrulls who looked with hope towards him. He says Talos was a timid general who, in Gravik's eyes, turned the Skrulls from a warrior race to a band of beggars. He says Fury deserves to die for his betrayal and must live with the reality that he couldn't save the human species. Surprisingly, Fury accepts all the accusations and concedes that he failed them. And for that, he deserves to pay the price. He pleads with Gravik not to initiate the war between the US and Russia and offers him the harvest. We were so excited to talk about Oppenheimer and Barbie, and now we're jumping into Secret Invasion.
There are more questions than anything, because that's what left me with was questions, not answers.
I mean, I will say about the part that you read off that I thought the goodbye call between Fury and Priscilla was touching, and it was a little bit heartbreaking. We haven't known her for that long. It's just this show that we even found out Fury's married, but it still is this kind of like you don't have to hang up, if you don't want to, or however it was you were. I was like, oh, you felt that, or I did anyway.
Well, and their relationship is so interesting in this show because it's like they're both kind of reaching out to each other, but they also don't want to push too hard. So it just feels like they do just say these singular lines that just are so heavy and weighty. But I feel like you both could reach out a little more. And it's just so sad to watch them go through that and have to act like that with each other. They almost act formally with each other. I don't know. It's just an interesting relationship.
Definitely. I am glad that we kind of got to explore the relationship a little bit more in this episode as a whole.
Based on the plot twist that happens later with Fury in the film, I thought it was really smart how they had him in this back alley. Back alley could be anywhere. You don't actually know really where he's at. And that was, I thought, a really smart little trick they did.
Going along with that, I liked the line of "you sound far away," because usually when people say that on the phone, it's because you've got them on speakerphone or whatever. And they're like, oh, are you away from your phone, kind of a thing. And at first I didn't get that line, but then I thought about it and I was like, no, she's meaning it deeper. She's meaning it almost like his feelings. Like, I feel you pulling away from me, or I feel like you and your feelings towards me are far away. So I feel their lines to each other, because we talked about this a couple episodes ago too, when they were like sitting at the table and having the back and forth. The words they say have multiple meanings to them. And I like that.
Yeah, and I really liked Fury walking out of the forest and taking out those two Skrulls at the very beginning. And it does, in retrospect, kind of make sense because that character would know exactly how that setup works when a car drives up. Because we see that in episode 1, where a car does pull up to the compounds and it's a whole situation. So with that knowledge, then Fury's walking in and just taking out the only 2 guards apparently at the compound.
When Fury walked in to the compound and he's starting to get affected by the radiation, I'm like, why is he not wearing any protection? He knew where he was going. He knew he was going to a literal radioactive site. What is he doing? it all makes sense now, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, they played that pretty well. And like, yeah, that was a really cool moment though, when you find out all the cars empty and Skrull Fury shows up and pops the guards off. And it was like, oh, it was like, ah, Fury's back. That was like, even though it wasn't him, but you're like, yeah, he's back, you know?
Yeah. Let's jump into that then. The machine with the DNA of the Avengers is switched on to give Gravik their powers. After the machine is activated, Gravik emerges in his true Skrull form. Fury is still struggling and is backed into a corner by Gravik, but when he attacks him, Fury is able to withhold his punch. Fury then throws Gravik into the sky and out of the facility with a single punch. It is then revealed that it wasn't Fury, it was Gaia in his skin. She has the powers of the Avengers as Gravik has. They begin an epic battle where we see the powers of many Avengers being used by each of them. Eventually, Gaia succeeds using the powers of Mantis to put him to sleep. When she does, Gaia pierces Gravik's heart and kills him once and for all. She proceeds to free all the important emissaries in captivity at the facility, which includes Colonel Rhodes, Agent Ross, and the British Prime Minister. So last week I did kind of predict that Gaia was probably going to be the one battling Gravik. That made sense in this finale, at least to me, because they both previously were superpowered, but then they got super amped up in this. And yeah, the whole reveal that it was Fury, was that something you guys saw coming, or was that a surprise for you guys?
Surprise mostly. I knew something was up. I just didn't know what. But then the second it happened, I was like, okay, duh. So it was like a mixture of surprise and obviousness.
If this episode had been long and it had happened like 20, 30 minutes later, it wouldn't have surprised me. The thing that surprised me was like how quickly into the episode it like jumped into the final fight.
Let's talk about that. The second we pulled it up and it was 37 minutes, I was like, oh no, starting to go well. Because the last episode, we were not feeling it and we had so many questions. And this just continued. It didn't get better. It just continued with the questions instead of.
Yeah, it felt like the writing of the show really had Game of Thrones, where like they do a great job the first like 3, maybe 4 episodes, and it's really intriguing questions. That's this nice political thriller drama. And then felt like they just were like, hey, we have other projects we need to work on, so we needed to just wrap everything up as quickly as possible because it just felt so short. I liked the final fight scene between Gaia and Gravis, but I didn't feel anything though, because I was like, oh, she kills him? Oh, that felt too easy. It felt too quick. The fight itself had some cool back and forth, and the Mantis thing was a nice touch, but it just felt so quick that was unsatisfying for me.
Right. You kind of talked about this last couple of episodes, Jesse, kind of like, okay, we're leading up to a big finale episode. Are we actually going to feel in suspense? Are we going to feel attached to the events happening in the episode? And like you're kind of saying, John, it was a quick reveal and then as a quick one-on-one. I mean, that thing was probably, was what, 35 minutes long? I did enjoy the one-on-one battle as well, how Guy was utilizing those same abilities differently. Gravik seemed like he was more taking on the brute strength abilities, and Gaia was, I'm going to use ghosts abilities, I'm going to use, like I said, mantises. So that was interesting because they are technically evenly matched in their arsenal of abilities. So how are they actually going to be utilizing those now in this showdown? So I enjoyed that aspect of it because visually it wasn't bad. I thought it was all right. I thought it was pretty cool. But just the game plan, okay, we're going to give the serum and then go through all this whole situation. That stood out to me as a big question mark.
And they could have done so much more with that fight scene because there were so many powers. Like if we had made a longer episode and we had drawn it out a little bit more as it should have, there could have been so much. I wrote down every single like person it put up on the screen. There's like 20 people here, okay? You've got Captain America, and you've got Black Panther, and Winter Soldier, and Hulk, and Thor. Like, there's even villains. They have Thanos in there. They have the Chitauri in there. Like, come on. There's so many things that could have been done.
Yeah, to that point, Jesse, I thought a lot of the powers, especially Gravik used, they all felt very just punchy powers. Other than, I think he used Ebony Maw's telepathy ability once with her. But other than that, everything was just kind of punchy that he used. They were more creative in how they showed her using her powers. And I wish they would have done it more with him too, because it could have been really cool to have seen something Thor related, like some sort of lightning ability, you know?
Yes. And if they had lengthened it like that, we could have gotten more of what you were hoping for from it, John, in that like feeling something, because there could have been an intermission where they're like, let's say when they finally use the Captain Marvel powers and they're both up in the sky. At that moment, when they're both up there taking a breath, they could have had a back and forth. They could have had a dialogue, because they got a good dialogue together as Gravik and Fury. But then when it's revealed it's actually Gaia, there's hardly any dialogue between those two characters whatsoever. So we could have gotten a dialogue between them then at that point. And then there's a part 2, like, oh, shoot, now they're pulling out the big guns and they've got Thor and they've got Thanos and they've got like some of these big things. Also, it bothered me that they knew they had Captain Marvel and they waited that long to use Captain Marvel. If I had been Gaia, I would have used Captain Marvel immediately to just annihilate him and weaken him, and then you can have fun doing all of these things. But the whole time they were fighting, I was like, okay, I know I have Captain Marvel, because that's the one they named by name multiple times when talking about the harvest. If I know that's in there, I'm using it. Whatever. But yeah, if they had just lengthened it and had some dialogue, we could have more.
Yeah, and I feel like I want in the final fight scenes to feel the heroes in danger. Like the guy or the girl that I'm rooting for, like there's a real chance they lose. I want to feel, oh shoot, are they really going to kill her off? Because they've done a good job already in the show killing off some of like the people we're really rooting for. Like they kill off Talos. They almost killed her off before. They've done that. It would have been somewhat believable if they would have made it seem like, oh shoot, he's whooping her.
Yes, exactly. And here's a thing they should have done, because it would have ribboned some things and it would have connected some things and it would have given us feels. I mean, maybe it would have given me feels. I don't know about you two, but because there's the Captain Marvel in there, they could have had a moment where he really gets her and we're thinking she's not going to be okay. But just like in Captain Marvel, at the very last second, she can muster up her strength and get back up. They should have had that, because for all intents and purposes, the pieces of that puzzle were there, and it would have given us more feeling, and it would have worked, and it would have connected her back to Captain Marvel and her whole, like, getting back up thing. They could have done it. They didn't do it. So it was just this, oh, we fight for a couple seconds. There's really no danger. Like, was fighting hard this whole series, and then that's it? Like, I don't know.
Or even like Captain America's like, I can do it all day and thing. That could have been cool too. Because really, what are you taking of Captain America? Do you really need his super soldier serum when you have all these other abilities? Like, no, you need that like mental toughness, right?
Yes, it would have been so good. Oh, why didn't we get that?
And I was kind of wondering too, after the episode had aired, whose arc are we really seeing when Gaia is impersonating Fury? Like, are we seeing Furies? Are we seeing Gaia's? Are we seeing nobody's? Because that was a big moment, a larger conversation there. Gravik is kind of going through his whole monologue about how Fury's the worst, and Fury's like, yeah, I am. And it was interesting though, as a viewer, it's like, oh wow, Fury's kind of going into his whole headspace here. That was kind of cool. And then it gets washed away with that reveal that it's Gaia.
I literally have that written down, because it acting character-driven heart, that we get this really good dialogue, an important dialogue between Gravik and Fury. And he's like, my face is the man you made me kill. And they have this really good catharsis. And Fury's like, yeah, I did fail you. And he has the really good lines about, oh, you can't change the hearts and minds of 8 million people. And I realized there was no place for you out in the universe. So I just had to find how to make you a home here. There are all these good lines and good moments, and it should have been important. And then it's just Gaia the whole time.
Right. It was weird. It was kind of disappointing.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a good move. It was a good strategic move for her to be the one there, because then that's how you get the fight, and that's how whatever. So I know why they did it, but why make that dialogue between people that it doesn't matter to? Like, the fact that it wasn't Fury just cheapens all of that conversation then. it's throwaway.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's how I was viewing it. Unless Fury did have a conversation with Gaia where he's like, hey, we were talking to Gravik, here's my whole headspace, potentially. But we don't see that happen. And so that's just speculation on my end. But with all this kind of being said too, my question was, so then if I have this correct, the Fury we see at the end of last week's episode, who is actually Gaia going through security and entering Russia, having that whole, let me go get the serum at the graveyard, that was all Gaia. Is that correct?
Who knows who that would have been? I mean, I don't know how she would have had all of that because he breathes on the headstone, you know? How
That's
would
true.
the heart wreck have been? I feel like it maybe was him going to get the stuff because the stuff was in Finland, one of the Scandinavian countries. Like that's where his grave is because that's where him and Priscilla honeymooned. And so it might have been him getting the stuff, but then he hands it off to her right away. And maybe she's who he called there at the end of that episode when he was like, let's finish this.
Okay, that makes more sense.
I have no idea.
Okay.
See, I said so many questions.
Yeah, because I was just like, oh, wait, how long has Gaia been Fury? When did that switch off happen? But it makes more sense, I think, narratively at least.
Yeah, that's kind of how I interpret it too. Because otherwise, why would she need anything but the vial when she went there if it was her, not Fury? Because she doesn't need his eye patch and his trench coat and stuff because she can just fake that stuff.
That's true. That's a good point. Okay. So meanwhile at the hospital, Sonya makes a call to the fake Rhodes asking him to secure the president. Panicking, Rhodes does as asked. One by one, she and Fury take out the entire security detail on the floor. Eventually, it is Ritson, Rhodes, Sonya, and Fury. Rhodes had earlier convinced Ritson to launch the strike, and the president went ahead and moved forward with the plan. It is a bit of a standoff as Ritson does not know whom to believe. The situation ends with Fury shooting Rhodes in the head and Ritson canceling the strike. Sometime later, President Ritson addresses the nation, confirming that the Skrulls were responsible for the attempt on his life. Ritson declares war against all aliens, setting up a dark future to come for the MCU. Fury meets with Priscilla in their home, which was trashed when the Skrull rebels attacked Priscilla and Gaia there. Priscilla asks Fury if he really fell in love with her or with the face she wore, and Fury says he loves her, asking for one last chance. He then tells her that he's going back to Saber that night. If you can find a way to forgive me, he says as he's leaving, you know where to find me. This whole hospital thing is really interesting. I definitely feel both in the previous episode and this episode, it's not quite landing, I guess, for me, is a good way to put it. It doesn't seem like that would be how things were handled.
Exactly. I literally felt when she calls him and she's like, oh, you got to get the president to safety. I felt that entire scene of him like, oh no, like trying to push the hospital and freaking out and stuff was super superfluous. It was kitschy. It was campy. It was silly almost even. Like what? That whole scene, they were almost playing it like comedically. Like it was just so silly. I couldn't believe it to be a serious moment because it felt so silly. It was not it. It was not it. I did not feel the danger. I did not feel the, oh no. I just felt, oh, this almost hurts to watch.
It felt kind of cartoony almost, with all the guards' bodies being taken out one by one, dragged off into random closets or rooms. This is concerning if the president's security is this bad, because two people taking out the whole security team would be, I would say. But yeah, like you're kind of saying though, Scrody having that reaction where it's like full panic mode, that was questionable. And I was like, oh, what's on the second floor that's so much safer than their current setup? Why aren't they on the second floor to begin with if that's such a better, more secure wing of the hospital or whatever? So there was a lot of questions, I guess, that I had during those events.
And that line came out about, oh, we got to get him to the second floor. I was like, that is the worst line I possibly ever heard, because what? If you're told to get the president to safety, never in a million years would I be like, let me keep him in the same exact building. I'd be looking at extraction at that point, not let's just bring him up a floor or down a floor, whatever it was. What? No.
Yeah, they did Secret Service dirty in this scene for sure. Like, these are supposed to be some of the best trained operatives in the country. I mean, you don't become Secret Service your first day on the job. That's the like peak of your career for those guys who do that. And it's like, I get that Fury and I'm blanking on a name, but the MI6 lady, I get that they're like the best of the best. And there's a reason they're the directors and stuff, but it still did feel a little bit silly how easy it was for them to just shoot them all up without anyone catching them doing it, you know?
Right. Nobody's radioing in, hey, my whole team's down. Like nothing like that was happening. Like, oh, no wonder the president's like, hey, give me your gun. He's like, these guys can't do their job at all. And yeah, we had that standout situation, which we've seen a lot in film. Oh, you're actually being betrayed by the closest ones to you. Believe me. What I found really interesting is when President Ritson is addressing the nation, because that was kind of, at least for me, kind of getting more into the secret invasion aspect, because now the public is aware of the scrolls, and kind of seeing the mishandling, at least in my opinion, of that delivery of that message, of that call to action, was really interesting to me. And I wish we had gotten to explore that a little bit more, even if it was another 2 minutes, because it is really quick, showing scrolls being taken out, even on live television as news anchors. And then as a result, it seems like people are being vigilante and taking out everybody, but also they're taking out people that aren't scrolls. So that whole aspect was really interesting to me. And I wish we had got to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah. Aside from this episode and the last couple feeling very short and rushed, I feel like this should have been the mid-season episode. And then we start to see, because yeah, the like post-salute of this episode felt like I thought most of the season would be, of like, here's this invasion, here's actual stakes, here's a worldwide thing, how people are reacting and freaking out, and and because people trying to do the right thing but completely misguided on what to do. And that's really interesting. And it made me look up afterwards, is there like Secret Invasion season 2? And there's nothing. They have not announced anything. I don't know if they plan on doing it or not. And if they don't, it's like just a weird spot to leave this. Like, are we expecting all these other shows to wrap up the effects of the Secret Invasion?
I agree with you so much. It should have been episode 4. It should have been episode 4, and then 5 and 6, like we get these action-packed, amazing 2 episodes. It should not have been the final episode, because this episode felt like it should lead into something, but I'm looking ahead at the schedule and I'm like, what does this lead into? It doesn't lead into the Marvels. It could have led into the Marvels, because like Captain Marvel's story has been so intertwined with the Skrulls, but it's not going to. That's not what the Marvels is about. The Marvels is going to be about the 3 of them having to figure out why their powers are intertwined. It's not going to lead into Captain America New World Order. I mean, it could a little bit, but not a ton. Ritson himself might lead into it, and having to create a different or new nation. I mean, there's ways it could. The only one maybe it'll lead into it is Thunderbolt. Maybe it's a prequel to the Thunderbolts, but even then I feel like that's a stretch. Like, what is this series leading to? It's just outrageous.
Yeah, like I just hope they don't clean up all of the effects off screen. Like, I hope it's not, because yeah, it feels like a huge event. And then from the trailers of the Marvels, it doesn't look like it's going to play effect into that at all. Maybe the new Captain America will be cleaning it up. Like, maybe that's what creates this New World Order, because all these governments have to come together somehow to solve it. And it's kind of this dystopian type movie. But I don't know. I feel like most of the Secret Invasion will actually just happen off screen, I feel.
Which is a travesty and also has huge implications, because in his speech, he said all off-world born people here, which would mean Thor, which would mean all of the new Asgard, like chilling in Norway. This isn't just about the Skrulls. This is about if the Guardians of the Galaxy ever come back. This is about a lot of characters. And if they do clean it up off screen, that's just going to be outrageous. I feel like that's going to make a lot of people mad, and someone's not doing something right. They had a huge opportunity here, and it's just not. It's not anything.
Yeah, in the Marvels trailers, at least, we kind of see Fury's up on Saber with a lot of alien-looking people. So I'm wondering if he's going to be harboring potentially a lot of aliens up there. as a result of the president's orders, but I'm not sure. I do want to jump into the last of the synopsis before we dive into this a little bit deeper, because we do have a couple lines I think might speak to that. So Sonya and Gaia meet, with Sonya proposing an alliance, offering the Skrulls the resources they need to fight against Ritzen's war. Gaia is skeptical, as it sounds a lot like Fury and Talos' old arrangement. Sonya wins her over by promising that it will be all business between them, but they will make the planet safer for both Skrulls and humans. Fury drives back out to the spot where he first landed in episode 1 and calls the president, telling him off for making a bad situation worse. Sonya takes Gaia to a secret location where vast numbers of humans have been kept prisoner, hooked up to more pods like the ones in New Skrullos. Gaia is shocked as she realizes just how deep the Skrull Rebellion actually goes and the monumental task before her. Fury tells Ritson that they have to act now to reverse the damage he's done, but the president refuses, telling Fury to get the Skrulls off the planet. Fury is clearly disappointed as he prepares to leave. Just then a car pulls up, driven by Priscilla. She tells Fury that now that humans know about the Skrulls, she wants to use her birth name, asking him to call her Vara. Fury tells Vara that he has some good news. The Kree are open to peace talks with the Skrulls. Vara is cynical, but Fury tells her it's a good thing and asks for her help as a diplomat. He asks her to go with him, and she says she'll help him get started, but she'll have to be back on Earth eventually. Vara then takes her natural form and tells Fury she loves him as she is. Fury responds by saying, "Only as you are," kissing her in her Skrull form, and making it clear that he loves her no matter what face she wears. Together they leave Earth for Saber, and that is where the show ends.
That line that he says about how the Kree are open to peace talks makes me wonder if it could play a part in the Marvels, which would be nice if they do bring it back like that soon and it doesn't get cleaned up off screen. I would be hesitant if they do try to tackle that storyline in the Marvels, because I feel like then they would be trying to do too much in a singular movie. Unless this movie's going to be 5 hours long, which we know it won't be. It's going to be hard to establish this whole side plot of like peace talks with the Kree and figuring out how Skrulls can survive, and having this very political stuff going on over here, but then also trying to explore two relatively new characters, dig into them and how they connect to a character we've had for a while, figuring out their powers and their story and trying to connect themselves from each other. Like, those seem like two movies, not one movie that can be respectfully and well told within a 2.5 hour. I mean, I don't know how long the movie is, but I'm just guessing 2.5 hour like mark. It wouldn't do either story justice.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they do focus on the free scroll diplomacy at all. I think at most it's going to be like the backdrop of that's what Fury's doing. He's on this important diplomatic mission with his wife, Vara. And then that's when, Miss Marvel shows up in front of the station or whatever. So like he's getting pulled away from that. And then we just leave that alone and focus on the adventure between the three Marvels.
Yeah, I think you're right there, John. I think it definitely, if it is going to be played out in the Marvels, it's definitely going to be a backdrop. Isn't the main villain in the Marvels, is she a Kree?
I haven't I haven't even watched the trailer because like I said before, I try to avoid them for as long as I can, because otherwise I start to use my excited fangirl brain a little too much, and then I create a whole movie inside my head, and then I watch the movie, and sometimes it's disappointing because what I came up with in my head is different and better. So I try to avoid. So I'm not sure, but probably, because Kree, even in the comics, have always been an enemy of Carol, and they were in the first movie. So it makes sense if this is another like issue she's having.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I just watched the trailer that came out last week, and that was my thought process with Secret Invasions. I don't know if that's accurate, but that was my thought process.
Interesting. I wonder too, like with these being the villains going forward, it's like maybe they will be, but my understanding of it is Ronan is like this fanatic that's not representative of like the larger governing body of the Kree. He's kind of this renegade general, or like he's the accuser. Who's gone rogue. And so I almost wonder if with him completely out of the picture and with the aftermath of the Infinity War, the blip, all that, because that's not just Earth that was affected by the blip. I wonder if that's become a more moderate group. And the creator just, yeah, we're looking for peace. We're looking for ways to get along with everyone, including our old enemies, the Skrulls.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it right now as I'm reading this article. It looks like they are a member of the Intergalactic Kree Empire. It looks like it's a gender swap, like in the comics, it's a he, and it's going to be a she. So yeah, that'll be interesting, I guess, without going into too much detail about it. So that does track, I guess, a little bit. Oh, maybe we'll be seeing some of this, like you're kind of saying, John, on the sideline in the background, playing out in the Marvels potentially, loosely.
Do you guys feel overall? Because I feel like other than Loki, and even Loki was this way a little bit, but I feel like so many of these shows, the ones that work at all for the MCU, have like really good questions they set up in the first few episodes. But I feel like none of them, except with the partial exception of Loki and maybe Hawkeye, give any answers that are all interesting. Like the answers are never as good as the questions. And it just, like, I don't know. I feel like this one had a lot of interesting questions in the first few episodes. And then the answers have just been either non-existent or like, oh, that's the most boring version of it possible.
Yep.
Maybe it's a little harsh, but
It's not. It's at this point, since they have continued this trend, it's not harsh. At this point, it's just okay, guys, maybe do better. If it was just one show that fell prey to this, I feel like it could just be a harsh criticism of what are you doing? But since this keeps happening, something's off. Something's wrong. They need to do better.
I feel like they're making a bit of a smart decision by not shortening, but like having fewer of these shows per year so they can focus a little bit more on each of them. But I also feel 6 episodes is more than a movie, but it's not long enough to be a well thought out, well done TV show. It's like kind of the impression I'm getting. Like Marvel doesn't know how to do 6 episodes well.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're going to do 6 episodes, the 6-episode format works if you know it's an ongoing series, because then you can continue it and you can answer these questions in the next season and it can keep going. One-off series, they need to be 8 or 9. If they're a one-off series that we know is a closed story and may lead into a future property, but we don't know that for sure, they need to be longer so that you can do it justice. If you have a title like Secret Invasion, either make it lead into things in the future or make it longer.
I agree. Because, yeah, kind of speaking to the question aspect of it, the big one I have is surrounding Rhodey, because we really don't get an answer on, we've been speculating, oh, how long has he been a Skrull, right? And I know the internet's kind of taken this and ran with it, but when we do see him, he is in the hospital gown and he seems to need assistance walking. And a lot of people online are thinking that that's implying that he's been a captive since Captain America Civil War when he went in for surgery. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but if that was the case, that would mean he doesn't know Iron Man's dead, about Thanos, the blip. I mean, that's a lot of times to kind of re-examine. However, at least in my personal opinion, I don't think that's the case, because Gravik didn't actually come up with this plan until the big battle for Earth. And so I personally am thinking that maybe Rhodey got swapped out when he went in for like a checkup or something on his spine. But I was curious if you guys had any thoughts about that whole Rhodey situation, because it is very unanswered in the show. I'm hoping we get some answers in the future, but it's a big question mark for me.
Yeah, I would guess it happens sometime after Infinity War, or like maybe pre-Endgame, maybe during the blip time sometime, because like that was a very chaotic time and feel it'd be easiest to start hatching a plan during that time. But there is also in Infinity War, there's kind of a little bit of flippancy from Rhodey and how he handles the Colonel, or not the Colonel, but who's that guy? But you know what I'm talking about, like when the Avengers show up hiding at Avengers headquarters and he's supposed to arrest them. Like the way he dismisses Washington was very, yeah, it didn't feel quite like him. So maybe it's pre that, but I don't know. My guess is it's sometime after the events of Infinity War during the blip.
Okay. Because yeah, if it was before, then that'd be like 9 years potentially, which seems like a lot. I don't think they would do that because that would be kind of major. But I'm hoping that we do get more of a definitive answer in the upcoming Marvel shows or movies with Rhodey, because I don't know when the next time he's going to be popping up. Do you guys know?
Probably Armor Wars, I would guess.
Okay.
Ironheart, I don't know which one comes first, but definitely Armor Wars for sure. He might show up in Captain America, might show up in Thunderbolts, because it seems like they're having him show up even as a small part in some of these things, because like he showed up in the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier just to give a little speech to Sam. So yeah, who knows? We could potentially see him anywhere because he is such an American government figure.
Right. One of the big questions I had, which is more like, why didn't Fury say something, was when Fury is talking to the president after he's basically said, go kill all the alien species on Earth, is that Fury doesn't remind him that Talos saved the president's life. And that just seems like a really big, glaring issue to me, because that was the whole point of Talos' sacrifice, was like, oh, I'm going to make an impact. I want to save this person so that hopefully they can help my people. And Fury doesn't even bother to remind the president that he was saved by a Skrull while the president is out here basically telling people to kill them. So that was something that disappointed me. And I guess with Fury as a whole, I really went back and forth on his character in this show. I really enjoyed the whole storyline with him and Vara, honestly. But then also we do get kind of a little gypped, at least is how I view it, when we don't really get to see Fury confronting his actions or inactions when it comes to the Skrulls, because it feels like, at least with his character, he's like, okay, well, that situation's all done. Guy's going to take it from here. Bye, I'm going back to Saber. So it was disappointing. But I like Fury's character a little bit less after the show, honestly, because he lives in the gray, but he's also really screwed over the Skrulls for his entire career, and he continues to do so. He's like, oh, I'm going to go talk to the Kree, see what we can do. But in the meantime, bye.
Yeah, the way he tells the president, and the president chooses how he reacts to it. And I don't think the speech was the wisest way to do it, but still, like, that's Fury kind of gives him the intel, and just how dramatically it is that Fury reveals to him. It's by like shooting Rhodey in front of him and in a hostage taking situation of the president. Like, yeah, it would be really hard not to react in a very negative, powerful way, the way the president did in that situation. Like, you were almost killed in the hospital after almost being killed on the road by these Skrulls. And so, yeah, you're going to react pretty negatively. And for Fury to just leave after, it seems like the events have really ratcheted up. Like, I know the season's over. It's like, yeah, you got to do something with what you do with him, but it still just feels like he's no interest in dealing with the aftermath of what's he's started here.
He's like, yeah, World War III isn't going to start, but all the aliens are now being hunted. So that's a better situation. So I'm going to leave now. That's how I'm interpreting it, I guess. It may not be how everybody sees it. That's kind of how I saw it wrap up. And I was like, bro, that's messed up. Although they do have Gaia now, and she has all the abilities, which that's another thing where I was kind of disappointed in. Marvel has been kind of criticized a little bit in the past about, oh, we're like ratcheting it up with every Marvel production. It's like, okay, how do we get them even more powerful? And I'm interested to see what kind of happens with Gaia's character, just because she is the most powerful being now in the universe. So what's going to happen with Gaia? Another question mark.
Yeah, like this was it. They just did this for the purpose of the show, and that's all that she's going to be, and we're never going to see her again. Because I feel like if we see her again in the future, that has some pretty big implications, because she literally has like 20 different powers. That's insanely overpowered. That's almost beyond Thanos with all Infinity Stones level, because she can do a lot of those things that those Infinity Stones could do. I mean, she can't like do any of the crazy mystical stuff, but I don't know. It just seems too hokey, too much. It's too ridiculous. When they kept saying Captain Marvel over and over again in the earlier episodes, I was like, okay, maybe it's like Captain Marvel and then a couple random foot soldier kind of blood things. Nope, it's everyone. It is literally everyone and everything. I don't know.
Yeah, because they did the same thing with Moon Knight, where there's like, oh, there's these uber powerful Egyptian gods doing stuff behind the scenes, but why are they not involved with Infinity War? Like if half of them are going to die with the snap, like, why do they not care? Why are we not seeing them? Or like Eternals are these super powerful, the Celestials. And there was like a Celestial partially burst on Earth, poking into out of the atmosphere. That hasn't been referenced in anything. It just feels like even though there's big stuff happening, the stakes feel small because very little of it affects other things. Like Loki's really the only one of these shows or movies. Loki and Spider-Man are the two that feel like they've actually affected the rest of the MCU afterwards. And none of the others have really felt as big and game changing as they were supposed to feel. Like they don't actually change the game.
That has been my biggest criticism with these two phases, phase 4 and now 5, is that all of these things were supposed to be, like, I have said it a couple times now, but Multiverse of Madness to me, I was like just dumb excited for. Like, I was beside myself. You guys don't understand how excited I was for it, because I thought it was going to have greater impact on the MCU. And I was like, this makes literally 0 sense to me. And then, yeah, Eternals didn't make sense to me. Okay. I wanted to love Eternals so much because I love history. So I was like, oh my gosh, these people have been here forever and they've been in all of these amazing moments in history. And I was so excited for it. And I still liked it. But there again, no greater impact. None of these, a lot of these series, like you say, no greater impact. It's not making any sense. Like, yeah, in the first 3 phases, we had to wait years for things to connect, but they were already connecting to them. Like the post credits and mid credit scenes were already connecting to the next thing. Even if we had to wait years for it, you knew it was connected. All of these, nothing's connecting. And it's like, there aren't any stakes anymore. I'm not feeling connected to these characters because I don't know if I'm going to see them again. You know, like, okay, big whoop. I liked you for this series or for this movie, but you may never appear again. So why am I going to get attached to you like I got attached to the characters of phase 1 through 3? I don't know. It's going somewhere and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because it's 2025 at this point that the next Avengers is set to come out.
In theory.
Yeah, so if that is the case, I wonder if they do tie it all together then. But even before the first Avengers, like, yeah, they did feel somewhat connected. And in between, was Ultron after Civil War before? I think it was before, right?
Before.
Yeah. But between 2 and 3, they really were super connected in like the beginning of phase 3. And because there's Civil War and all these people come together and like, boom. And yeah, are Eternals ever going to have any interaction with Gaia, this uber powerful being? Or is she ever going to like cross Doctor Strange or Wanda or something? It's like, it doesn't seem likely. And maybe Loki ties in some of this other stuff, but I don't know.
And I thought they were creating a young Avengers or a new Avengers team because they have all of these younger versions of all of the characters we're aware of. So why aren't they creating? Because that's what was beautiful about the phases before this is you knew they were leading up to Avengers, or you knew they were leading up to like Infinity War. They're not leading up to anything right now. They're not connecting anything. So we have all of these wonderful one-off characters, but what do they matter?
Right. Like, when are we going to see Moon Knight again?
Yeah.
Is it going to be the next 5 years? Like, when is that going to happen? Right. That's really a valid question.
Yeah, because when the Guardians first came out, I loved it, but it felt so different from the rest of the MCU, so distant. But they still tied it in because, oh, there's Thanos, and we introduced Thanos at the end of Avengers. So you're like, oh, okay, so they are connected, even if they're very distant at this point. And then when they connected, it was like, oh, finally, in Infinity War. But like, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still hoping that Kevin Feige does have a plan. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I am hoping that it does make sense, at least in the next couple of years. The other aspect that I really wanted to talk about was the show's budget, because Oppenheimer's budget was $100 million. Do you know how much the budget was for this series? 212. Craziness. And I know there's a lot of CGI in the show, but as a whole, it is around the same length of time. Oppenheimer's a 3-hour film. I would guess we compiled all of the actual film that was presented in this TV show, it'd be around 3.5. But it's literally double the budget. So my question is, where did the money go? Most of this show is people talking. And then at the end, we have that quick fight sequence along with the attack on the president. But it just doesn't make sense to me. And then on top of that, if we are going to be spending $212 million on this show, why aren't we bringing in top caliber writers and directors and having a top notch production? Like we've kind of talked about, there's areas where the writing doesn't really make sense with there being hardly any security at the hospital. It just seems like a sloppy production for something over 200 million. When we can kind of compare it to other MCU projects like Guardians of the Galaxy, that movie's like 2.5 hours. That was a 250 million budget for that film. But then when we compare to other 6-episode long MCU Disney Plus shows, that's where it kind of got interesting for me. Because some of the other MCU shows, they have like 8-9 episodes. But when we compare it to other 6-episode series, we have The Falcon and Winter Soldier, we have Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Loki season 1. Those are all capped at 150 million for 6 episodes. So when I was comparing these numbers, I was like, how did we get another $60 million in Secret Invasion compared to all these other productions? Like, where did the money go? Like, is a money laundering scheme? I don't understand what happens with this budget. Where did this go?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was trying to figure it out. I was like trying to think through, like, what is it because Samuel Jackson is just that expensive at this point? But there's no way he's more than Robert Downey Jr. because who was in Oppenheimer, and Oppenheimer had more A-list actors than this did. And it's like, I don't know. I think you're right that it is a money laundering thing. I think that's the only explanation.
That was my first thought as far as the budget, is maybe just because the cast is so stacked, because you have Samuel L. Jackson, you have Olivia Colman, you have Amelia Clark. Maybe that's why. But there again, like you said, Oppenheimer's cast is even more stacked, and they're coming in below. I don't know.
I do understand that Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's whole thing is have as little post-production as possible. And obviously there's CGI and Secret Invasion, but still ridiculous. That's at more than double the budget.
Even with the CGI, comparing it to, like, let's say Guardians of the Galaxy or Loki, or one of these things where you're having to do whole worlds in like CGI, and you're having to do all of these characters in CGI. The only CGI aspects of this show were some of the fighting scenes and the powers, because even the scroll makeup is practical. I mean, yes, the switching, like the effect of switching from a scroll to a skin, is CGI, but the scroll itself is a practical costume. It's a practical makeup. So even then, don't tell me it was AI. Don't tell me it was that AI title sequence that cost so much, because that was the whole point of using it in the title sequences, so that it didn't cost so much. So where did it go? That doesn't make sense to me. Unless maybe because they were shooting in all of these locations, maybe it's like travel costs. I don't know. That just seems wild to me. Something's fishy. So that is actually mind-blowing.
Yeah, like I had to Google it multiple times. Like Oppenheimer's 100 million, Secret Invasion is 212. And then that kind of got me down the whole rabbit hole of, okay, what are the budget for the other 6-episode Marvel Disney Plus shows? And it's 60 million more.
That makes no sense. It definitely is money laundering. Has to be all the explanation.
And again, with that huge budget, why isn't it a priority to get some high quality writers? I mean, no shade to the ones they had, but it could have been better. Like we've discussed, I feel like it could have been better written. I think it could have been better directed in some regards with some episodes as well. And so it is leaving me with another question, which is, okay, we have this over $200 million budget. Why aren't we treating this production like a top-notch production if we're spending top-notch money on it?
Exactly. And at this point, who doesn't want to work for? I feel like you could get good writers and directors in on this project, because who wouldn't be excited to work on that project? I mean, I know there's the whole Scorsese sect where like Marvel movies aren't it and they're not true cinema and, whatever. So there are those people. Like, I don't think, for all intents and purposes, I don't think you could get a Christopher Nolan in on a Marvel property, but you can get great people. like, you can get good people. So that's not throwing shade at these people that have worked on this. But it seems like the people that are working on these properties maybe just aren't understanding Marvel well. I don't know. Or it could be all the way from the top down. Like, Feige could be doing something. This could all be Feige. And like you said, maybe he does have a plan down the line, but I find that hard to believe because he did such a good job before. Even though it was a giant, like, 10-year plan, something that didn't come to fruition for years and years and years and years, he still did a good job of, in the very first properties, laying the cornerstones down and already connecting things. So I don't know. Something's weird.
I almost wonder if it's just the MCU's become too much for Feige, and it's just become so huge in terms of number of individual properties that are being shown. And I think in phase 4, like in that first year or two of them putting shows on Disney Plus, like there was more total runtime there than like the entire first 3 phases of the MCU or something crazy like that. And so I think part of it might be just can't be as hands-on because there's just more of it and his time's just being divided too many ways. It's like there's not one person directing the whole thing behind the scenes anymore. It's kind of almost by committee, and then everyone kind of has their own vision, but no one really gets their vision implemented well.
Well, and then if that's the case, why did we ever get to this point? Why did we ever get to a point where we think we have to pump out so many properties a year when, like, the fans of Marvel, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'd be happy with even just one property a year if it was as good as phase 1 through 3 was. Like, I'm fine with that. One big thing a year seems pretty darn good because early on in the phases, it was like every 2 years a new movie would come out. So even just one thing a year seems fine to me. Or if you wanted to do a series and a year, why do we think we have to have 12 things in a year? I mean, it wasn't 12, but it was a large amount that first year where they were pumping so much out on Disney Plus and they had 3 or 4 movies coming out. Why did we ever get to this point if now it's out of our control? Like, it's literally a unsteerable ship. Why did we ever let it get to this point? Someone made a decision and it was not a good one. And maybe it was Bob Chapek. Maybe it was the guy who was like, okay, we have this streaming service now and we need to fill it with content. I don't care what it costs or what the quality is. We're just going to pump it out. Who knows?
Yeah, I think with Bob Iger coming back, they have started to slow down, and he's publicly made some of those comments about how the way they rushed out some of the products on Disney Plus was a mistake. So I think that is part of it, but yeah, I don't think we'll ever fully know, being outsiders to what Disney's processes was running the MCU.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap up the episode just with our closing thoughts, I guess, on the season.
Yeah, I guess for me, I thought the first 2 episodes were really good, and then they just kind of fell a little flat, just felt a little rushed, but I still enjoyed it overall. I loved, what's her name? The new British, Nick Fury. Thought she was awesome. I thought Gaia was fun. I thought the Priscilla Fury dynamic was really fun. Like, a lot of the character moments were great, and then just the overall plot just fell a little flat the last couple, but it was a good show overall.
Yeah, I think for me, you're aware that because I talked to you about this in one of the earlier episodes that, like, I actually wasn't as excited for this one as I had been for some of the other series. So by episode 2, it pleasantly surprised me. And I was like, oh, this is actually going to be fun. I really enjoyed episodes 2, 3, and 4. I think they were solid. I think they were fantastic. They got me really excited. I think it'll honestly rank in the mid-level section for me. Like, there are definitely ones that were better for me than this one only because of the ending. Had it not been for the ending, had it stuck the landing, it might even be up in my top 3, maybe. But it's definitely beating out some other ones. So it wasn't a total loss, which is good. Even with this really kind of flat last 2 episodes, there was enough to save it for me. I think part of what made it so good for me was all of the references to earlier MCU properties. I felt like, ooh, finally something that's like connecting to things I love. So yeah, it was fine. It was good.
I have similar thoughts. Like, it was all right. It wasn't terrible or amazing. It was okay, I guess is how I would summarize my thoughts. And yeah, like you're kind of mentioning, Jesse, like when it comes to kind of ranking the MCU television Disney Plus shows, it is going to be interesting when I kind of sit back and think about that. And we are going to be planning to dive into that and kind of have a little bit of a ranking / discussion on the MCU Disney Plus shows coming weeks, which I'm really excited to have with you guys because we just wrapped up Secret Invasion, and now it just kind of beg the question, oh, how does that rank with my experiences with the other MCU shows? So I'm excited to be doing that with you guys in the near future. But in the meantime, I did want to give you guys the opportunity, like, do you have anything going on that you want to kind of shout out or speak about when it comes to personal things you got going on? Or is there, I know Jesse, like you said, you always go all out with your movie going experiences. If you'd like to post that, is there a good place people can view that and follow you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to start beefing up my Instagram again because I didn't post anything for 2 or 3 years. I went back through my log of things, so I've been posting a lot of stuff over the last couple days just to get it off my phone so I can delete the photos and it's somewhere existing. So it's our adventure book MJ, but between each word is an underscore. And then just my name is Jessie Tashi, JESSETASCHE, which I think you can find it either way. So that's my Instagram. Also, I am a teacher. I teach US history and theater, and my theater program is brand new as of last year. So we have nothing because budgets aren't given to the arts. Woo! So I do have a wish list on Amazon if you want to contribute to a growing theater program. And I talked about that a few episodes ago too. But you can search it by my name again, JESSETASCHE. And the itself is called Teaching / Classroom 2023-24. Ooh.
Awesome. Did you want to share any socials or anything you want to bring attention to, John?
Oh, I mean, if you want to follow me on social media, you can. I don't post hardly ever. Like, I'm not very active on it. But yeah, it's just John Roney, JOHN, and then RONEY. But yeah, I think it's been a year or so since I posted anything. I'm a bit of a boomer when it comes to social media.
Nothing wrong with that. Okay.
I'm super active on Facebook. Like, I'll post all my movie reviews and interesting thoughts on Facebook. So I also am very boomer in social media. Like, my TikTok is dead. My Instagram is dead. I'm on TikTok, but I don't post on TikTok as much. But yeah, I'm trying to be better about my now. So that's where you should go.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being a part of this whole journey. And thanks especially John jumping in midway. It's been awesome having you on. So I'm really glad that worked out. But yeah, until we meet again and dive into the MCU TV show as a whole, I hope you both take care and catch you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on it. And Jess, it's been great catching up with you as well. It's just been awesome to do this with you guys.
It's been fantastic. I have loved it. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to everyone listening for joining us the last few weeks as we dove into Secret Invasion. Definitely interested to hear your guys' thoughts. I know on Rotten Tomatoes, it is very split when it comes to the audience's scores on the show. You can go ahead and do that on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/groups/thecinema-club-TCC. And you can listen to us anywhere on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. We're also now on YouTube at the Cinema Club Podcast. Please also consider leaving us a review on iTunes. It really does help us reach more listeners. And feel free to invite even more new members to the club on the Facebook group or just through iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or Google Play. If you would like to try and be on an episode of the Cinema Club, please go ahead and email Nick or I at thecinemaclubtcc@gmail.com. And finally, I did want to say thank you so much to everyone supporting us, our listeners. If you are loving the show and if you are feeling generous, please consider clicking the support button on our website. You can check that out at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/the cinema club. Thank you all so much, and we will see you on the next one.